So guys, The Flash Season 7 Episode 2. So many stuff to break down because a lot of crazy stuff went down during this episode which we just need to freak out about, and I just cannot wait to talk about it. But also you guys will find out whether I like the episode or not. So let's roll the intro. Yo, what is going on guys, Flashverse here and welcome back to another video on The Flash Season 7, and this will be my review and breakdown for The Flash Season 7 Episode 2 titled Speed of Thought. And wow, this episode. So much to talk about because so many crazy stuff went down during this episode which you just wouldn't expect at all. It was just so awesome, and as I said during the very start of the video, I cannot wait to talk about this episode. So spoiler alert, in case you guys haven't seen the episode, you have been warned because I'll be covering some major spoilers since this is a breakdown after all, and there are some crazy stuff which you certainly wouldn't want to hear from me, let's just say that. But also be sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel so you are aware of more Arrowverse content coming your way. Okay, so this episode kicks off with Team Flash gathered around and they basically honor Nash Wells and the other versions of Wells as well in the Hall of Remembrance, and we see the belongings of basically all the fallen heroes. Like we see XS's jacket over here, basically Nora's, and then we see Jesse Quick's jacket as well, and we do also have Team Flash hanging up Wells's, I'm gonna say bag because I don't know what it's called, but they hang Nash's bag over there. Now this Hall of Remembrance room in Star Labs was actually engraved so that if the timeline was to change, those would stay there, so they wouldn't change at all, and that basically keeps them remembered and they wouldn't be forgotten about, which was a very nice addition that they added, and obviously Cisco was the one who mentioned that. Now Joe talks about how these Wellses taught them a lot, and including that their greatest weapon against darkness isn't their superpower, but it's their humanity, which was a very nice line, and that does make sense because Joe always kills it no matter which scene he is in. Now Joe then talks to Barry about not blaming himself about Nash's death because obviously Nash needed to sacrifice himself in order for Barry to get his speed back, and Barry basically suffers the guilt from that because of Nash's sacrifice, and Joe's like, Barry, don't blame yourself over this, and Joe basically tells Barry to also have some faith because they will get Iris back. Now we then head over to the Central City Citizen where we obviously have Allegra, and she's looking at this photo of Nash with her doppelganger as well, and then she also notices that Iris has sent an email from the Mirrorverse, which does make her more intrigued as well. And we then cut to Star Labs, and Cisco basically built this device through Atlantean tech to tackle perpetual motion. This is in order to save the ones who are trapped from the Mirrorverse, and they want to open a portal so they could save the people in the Mirrorverse. However, it is not working. They still need to add some adjustments to it to get it to work. Now Cisco is upset because he mentions that he's lost his friend, he has his girlfriend trapped in the Mirrorverse, and basically nothing he can think of even brings him closer into finding her and finding the solution for all these issues. So Cisco's basically stressed about that, in which Barry promises Cisco that they will get everybody back. They will get Iris back, they will get Camilla back, and they will get Singh back. Now Cisco does mention that Chester is at his grandmother's house, and I'm guessing that's how they will split Chester and Cisco being around, because these two characters are so similar to each other. They pretty much do the same thing when they're around Star Labs. So I was interested to see how they would balance these two characters out, but I think that's how they're going to do it. So one character will be elsewhere and then the other one will be in Star Labs doing the whole tech support thing. Now Cisco is thinking of a problem, and this is when we get our first look of Barry's speed thinking abilities, and we actually see him see the future moments before it actually happens, and he basically gets the answer for what Cisco was looking for before Cisco wrote it down. And Barry was confused because he thinks Cisco has already written it, and Barry's pretty much starting to become Brainiac 5, obviously if you guys watch Supergirl. But I love what Cisco said after that when he's like, "You freaky." I thought that was hilarious. I really liked that. Now Allegra then arrives and tells Barry and Cisco about the email that was sent from the Mirrorverse, and Barry uses his speed thinking once again, and basically the whole room is confused. He's like, "Wait, what are you doing?" And again Cisco does say, "You freaky," once again. Now we then cut to Eva, and she's rewatching the clip of herself dying, well, her real self dying. Sunshine walks in, who was obviously a black hole mercenary from last season, and she basically tells Eva that they have located the new stash of black hole weapons. She basically tells her that she should gather the troops so they could basically go infiltrate the area. But Eva wonders if anything is different about her, and she asks Sunshine whether there is something different about her, in which Sunshine notices that look on Eva's face, and she says that was the look that Carver gave us when he lied to us. And Eva basically responds by manipulating her. She's like, "Why would I lie to you? I'm not Joseph." Eva basically decides to head over to the stash area by herself without the black hole mercenaries with her. Now we then head back into Star Labs, and Cisco is testing Barry's new abilities, and Cisco mentions that Barry's neurons are on super speed, so Cisco's tests and basically the monitors on the screen can't even register what is going on in Barry's mind. So they need to find another way to test these new abilities which Barry got, in which Cisco brings out a quantum ball. Basically this amplifies kinetic energy, and this ball is basically unpredictable. Whatever it does, you cannot predict what is happening. Barry's speed thinking abilities should be able to predict it if he does have that speed thinking power. And then Cisco basically throws the ball, and Barry's basically able to predict every single place which this ball ends up going to. So yeah, these powers that Barry has are pretty damn overpowered. Basically Barry knows how to open a portal to the Mirrorverse while using these speed thinking abilities, which was pretty interesting to see. Now I cannot remember what exactly it was, but Barry mentioned something about getting rid of Ramsey's blood particles from Eva because that was the only way she was able to travel in between worlds, and that has something to do with, like, you know, getting Iris out of the Mirrorverse, something like that. And basically they use DeVoe's chair to do something with it. It was pretty complicated because Barry, while using these speed thinking abilities, he was talking like next level scientific stuff. I literally had no idea what was going on, so I could only pick like a little bit of pieces together. But Barry basically grabs a bunch of whiteboards and he basically explains to the team in regards to what they're supposed to do. Now we then head to the Mirrorverse, and Camilla basically meets with Iris after they have been separated during the season 6 finale. They were unable to find Singh, but Iris mentions that he must have received Iris's email, so he should be on his way to the Speed Lab in Star Labs. Now we have Eva heading over to infiltrate that black hole military area, and she basically scares off the people over there. And Barry mentions while he's hiding that he's brought in some extra muscle, and we obviously see that Frost is back. Caitlin is finally back, and it's great to see her as well for the first time since season 6. Basically Barry used Caitlin as a distraction so Barry could do his thing with the tachyons. Basically as Eva dodges Frost's blast, Barry ends up running around Eva to absorb those particles, and they basically transfer from Eva onto the tachyon enhancer which Barry was wearing in that scene. Now I knew something was up because once Eva hit Frost, Barry refused to save her, and that would never happen. There's no way Barry would see a friend in danger and he would refuse to save them. So I knew something happened to Barry as soon as I saw that. So basically Barry was in flash time, and then he basically realized something and he just stopped. I'm like, wait, Barry, what the hell are you doing? But yeah, I noticed something was up as soon as he refused to save Caitlin over there. Now when we head into the med bay, we see Barry's posture starting to change. He's acting in a very weird way in which he would normally act. And Barry is able to fix up Caitlin as well using his speed thinking abilities once again. Now this is where Cisco starts to become hesitant about Barry's speed thinking abilities due to him leaving Caitlin to get hit. Now Barry mentions that there is a possibility of the tachyon device getting damaged if Barry actually did engage. he was able to find that out because he used his speed thinking abilities once again. But Cisco's also starting to put these pieces together and realizes that something is up. And Barry wasn't normal. Like, he wasn't normal at all. Like, from this point onward, you see Barry's emotion basically fading away. He's pretty much a robot at this point. Now we then cut to the Central City citizen, and we have Allegra grieving over Nash's death, and she mentions how she never had a father figure in the way Nash treated her, so she's upset about that. And we have Cecile basically cheering her up by talking about her like family background or something like that. Now we then get a WTF moment from Barry where he starts to act emotionless and basically acts very, very different, very calculating and less human. And Barry finds out the truth about Eva McCulloch, in which she is a mirror clone. She is not the real Eva. And we basically have her hack into McCulloch tech, in which we're able to find that footage of the night the particle accelerator exploded when the original Eva McCulloch died. So we then have this inhumane scene where Barry exposes Eva during this live interview that she had. You do see both Frost and Cisco in a state of shock. They're like, what the heck is wrong with you? What have you done? And like, although Eva is a villain, like that is not something you do. You do not just expose somebody like that on live TV. So yeah, they definitely knew that something was up. But Eva basically begins to freak out and she just explodes. She scratches like the interviewer as well. And she turns into the mirror version and she basically dives inside the TV and disappears from the area. That is when you actually assure yourself that Barry will be like, the villain of this episode rather than just a calculating robot, if you will. But Barry then uses Gideon and finds out that everyone can't leave the Mirrorverse. Either Camilla and Singh leaves the Mirrorverse or Iris alone, because Iris has stayed in the Mirrorverse for so long, she's basically adapted to it, and there's only enough of those particles that Barry gathered for Iris to leave. And because Singh and Camilla have been in the Mirrorverse for a less amount of time, they have less of those particles, so both of them could exit or Iris alone. It's either one of them. And at this point, Barry seemed like he was smarter than Gideon while using these speed thinking abilities as well, because he was able to find like a much faster method. We then have Barry run this simulation in regards to what would happen if he told the team that they could either bring out Camilla and Singh or Iris alone, in which Barry gets outvoted. So the three of them vote for Camilla and Singh, whereas Barry alone votes for Iris. And because he would be outvoted, Barry basically takes it upon himself to do it behind their back and rescue Iris alone. So yeah, Barry is freaky, you could say that. Now in the Mirrorverse, we then have Iris reuniting with Camilla and Singh in the speed lab, and both of them pass out because they were pulled into the Mirrorverse through the mirror gun, not by Eva alone. So Iris is fine, but Camilla and Singh are basically facing side effects. Now Cisco then enters the speed lab and he reveals to Barry that there were side effects from Barry using the artificial speed force, and that makes him emotionless. But Barry doesn't care about that, he just wants to save Iris. And one what the heck moment was when Barry called Camilla and Singh expendable once Cisco found out about what Barry was doing. And you would obviously expect this doesn't leave Cisco too happy, because Barry literally just dissed his girlfriend and basically called her irrelevant. And this then leads to Frost, Allegra and Cisco confronting Barry, because now they know for sure that something is really wrong with Barry and the speed thinking is really messing him up. And we basically get this awesome face-off between Team Flash against Robot Flash. I'm just going to call him Robot Flash because Barry isn't in his right state. Now Cisco then pulls out this gun and he basically shoots the artificial speed force machine, but Barry dives in right on time, and this was actually on purpose because Cisco is able to calculate that Barry would try and protect the speed force so that he doesn't end up losing his speed. But then that holy moly WTF moment was when Caitlyn used Velocity X on herself, which was just sick. I absolutely loved that, and I just didn't see it coming. But we got to see Caitlyn as a speedster for the very first time, which was awesome. Speedster Frost versus the Flash, and it was so cool. It was so cool to see. We have them literally battling it out across Central City, and one thing I absolutely loved was Caitlyn using super speed while also using her freezing abilities. I thought that was just really, really cool. Now, you would obviously expect Barry to defeat Frost. He does. He ends up defeating Frost with the speed aspects first. But then once Frost confronts Barry once again, Frost throws lightning and adds on an ice sandwich on that as well. Because that is moving in super speed, because Frost has the super speed by using Velocity X, everything she threw moves at super speed. So while that is happening, Barry is able to get hit. And while that happens, Allegra transports Barry back to the speed lab. And once that happens, Barry was obviously able to calculate what was going on, in which he says that he basically won the game without even starting it in the first place, in which we see that quantum ball ending up hitting everybody and knocking them out. This is when we see Barry quickly using that portal to open up a portal between the real world and the Mirrorverse. Now, emotionless Barry is able to open this portal, and he basically tells Iris to leave, in which Iris obviously doesn't want to leave because Barry revealed to her what is going on. It's either Iris that gets out or it's Singh and Camilla, and Iris obviously wants Singh and Camilla to be safe at first, so she doesn't want to leave. But Barry doesn't care. He increases the strength of the pull from this portal, and Iris basically gets sucked in against her will, and then she passes out once she has entered the real world, because I think that is because she's adapted to the Mirrorverse way too much, so she isn't used to being in the real world anymore, and I'm very interested to see where that will go. But this will cause some issues between West Allen, because that happened and Iris wasn't really aware of the speed thinking, so I'm interested to see where that will go. Now, once Iris passes out, Barry eventually snaps out of it, and he realizes how badly he screwed up, and he gets really upset over it. And he is guilty with the fact that he basically ruined everything. Once he got his emotions back, Barry basically throws lightning at the artificial speed force and destroys it, because everything that has happened right now was all because of the artificial speed force messing with him. So basically Barry looks everywhere, he sees his friends on the ground due to what he has done. He sees Iris being pulled into the real world against her will because she wanted to save the others. So Team Flash isn't going to be too happy about Barry, and I'm very interested to see where this goes. But once Barry destroyed the artificial speed force, he is back to square one, because he destroyed the artificial speed force, meaning he lost his speed once again. And we do see that blue lightning basically leaving his system due to the ramifications of him destroying the artificial speed force. So he's back to square one, he's back to using the original speed force. He's basically with limited speed again, and I cannot wait to see where this goes. Obviously, from an interview, we did know that this artificial speed force was going to be temporary, but I didn't know the artificial speed force was only going to be for like a 1-episode thing. I thought we would have had it for a lot longer. But yeah, it is what it is, and I'm very interested to see how they will solve this situation now that the artificial speed force method doesn't work. Now we then head over to Eva, and she's basically freaking out, and she plots a plan where she's basically going to turn the real world into the Mirrorverse by the looks of it, as she says, like, I'm not from this world, but I could make it. She says something like that, I can't remember what it was, but Eva then pulls in an officer into the Mirrorverse towards the end, and I have seen the trailer from next episode where basically she pulls in people from the real world and creates mirror duplicates of themselves, and I'm very interested to see where that goes as well. Obviously, this episode was the penultimate episode of the Mirror Master storyline, as next episode will be the conclusion of the Mirror Master storyline. So yeah, some crazy stuff will be going down next episode. But then we get a WTF moment in which we cut to the scene where the Reverse Flash takes over the original Harrison Wells' body after the murder of Nora Allen, and obviously once Eobard Thawne was stranded in the past, so he takes over the original Harrison Wells' body. But we cut back to that scene where the accident happens. we basically see this green particle energy forming from where the original Wells was buried, and this was awesome. We find out that the original Harrison Wells is back. I am very, very interested to see where this will go because this was crazy. Obviously, we knew a new version of Wells would be coming eventually, but wow, I didn't see this happening. I thought we would have had another version of Wells in some way, but not like this. This one was crazy. But this leads me to believe, because we've seen the Reverse Flash over here, is this the Reverse Flash cliffhanger they were talking about, and they basically took that ending from episode 3 and they put it onto episode 2? I'm not entirely sure. But overall, this was such a good episode. So much to freak out about. As I said, that Frost Speedster moment and that ending scene as well. It was just so great. I absolutely loved this episode. So far this season had 2 really strong episodes, and I cannot wait to see how this Mirror Master storyline wraps up next week. But yeah guys, thanks for watching. If you guys have enjoyed the video, please give a like and subscribe. Tell me in the comment section down below what you guys thought about this episode. And yeah, I will see you guys in my next video.